Valley Current.
I would hope so. In the situation you described with the grandfather, there were many questions to the client that were not asked that should have been asked.
You'd have to have a checklist. And the one thing that ChatGPT doesn't do, although I'll try to do it now and see if it does it, I'll say, please provide a checklist of all the questions that should be asked of the grandfather about this situation. Let's start there, and then we'll talk about the taxpayer, about the foregoing situation. Because the beauty of this is you can cross-reference stuff. So I just type that in, and I'll put it on the screen. We'll look at it together in real time, right? Because that's what we're doing. We're basically doing a little... So it did create 10 questions pretty quickly. Whether they're accurate or not is another question, but let's see what they said, just to see, because we got a checklist of questions. When gathering information from the grandfather regarding the situation described, it would be helpful to ask the following. How much money did the grandfather give the taxpayer for household chores? Okay, that we already know, that was a fixed number. Did the grandfather provide the money as compensation for services rendered? What was the frequency of the payments? Were they monthly or different schedule? Did the grandfather provide any documentation or records? Were the payments made in cash, check, or through other means? Did the grandfather provide any explanation or indication that the payments were intended as a gift? Was there any agreement or understanding between the taxpayer and the grandfather regarding the nature of the payments? Did the taxpayer provide any specific services, perform any specific chores in exchange for the payments? Did the taxpayer keep records related to the services provided? Did the taxpayer provide? So now they've extended this to the taxpayer, because I just asked.
Well, there's a handful of critical questions that are missing.
Still missing, right? Still missing.
Right, still missing. For example, if the grandfather is a U.S. resident, U.S. taxpayer, green card holder, then they have a current $12 million floor before gifts start becoming taxable. But if the grandfather is not a U.S. taxpayer, is an international resident, then it's only a $65,000 floor, and everything starts getting taxed at 40% at a very low level. So there's a handful of other estate planning questions that are missing in this. To me, to my mind, AIs are a solution looking for a problem, just as computers were for the last 30 years. We've had these very powerful computers and no idea what they're good for or how to make money off of them. But I finally discovered what computers are good for, and I'd like to share that with you.
Yeah, please.
I was watching my son, and I realized that the purpose of computers is so that kids can stream video of other kids opening gift present boxes.
Really? That's a big deal.
It's huge. He just loves it.
Interesting. So the other thing that is interesting for ChatGPT, just as we play with it here, is they did add an easy way to forward the ChatGPT session without cutting and pasting. They actually do give you some button that you can press.
I tried to use that and I could not make it work. Were you able?
Yeah, I'll show you. I'll send it to you. There's a button here on the left under the section that's a little arrow. And if I hit this up arrow, share link to ChatGPT, I can send this to you. I can send this link to you. I thought there was a way. I'll just say copy link. So I can send this link. I'll put it in the chat. You can grab it from the chat if you want to, just to get it, and just put it up on your screen. So it gives you the link. I just sent it in the chat. You can press that link and it's going to take you to this list of questions. But the reason I say it, because I think there is some value in brainstorming a set of questions, like for a deposition or for an interview, that sort of thing, because it does quickly generate, even if they're garbage questions, enough for you to be thinking about, well, that leads me to think of this. That leads me to think of that. Like if I ask you, can you list all of the 46 presidents of the United States? You would certainly remember George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, but somewhere in this you would get stuck. But if you ask ChatGPT to just spit out some stuff, you would start to see, okay, well, that does bring in mind that there was a guy named Clinton and Obama and Bush 1 and Bush 43 and Bush 41. And, you would start to remember, but I don't think we would get, even if we brainstormed together, I don't think we would get all 50, but ChatGPT and stuff like that could very quickly get to an answer, right? They would do that. If I say list all, what number are we at? 46 presidents of the United States from George Washington to who's president now? Biden, right?
Yes.
God, why can't I remember Biden's first name?
Joe.
Joe Biden. Jesus. I don't know why. I just had a brain freeze there. So let's see what they do just to see how this goes. So you do get, and they put the years in, which is nice, gratuitously. They don't number it one. They have a weird zero.
The numbering is
yeah, the numbering's off. The number
circular every 10 presidents.
Yeah, they do that. I don't know what that's about. But look, we would probably maybe gotten half of these together if we worked on them. And, it's pretty fast. And if you ask Google to do it, Google probably couldn't do it. We would have certainly gotten stuck at Rutherford Hayes.
Jack, this artificial intelligence cannot count from 1 to 46.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But if I said, now this is the master part of it, take the foregoing information and put it into a 2-column table where the name of the president is the first column and the years of service are the second column. And, this is work that a lot of secretaries would do. And I have to say, usually when you ask it to do columns, it's pretty nifty. It's pretty capable. Let's ignore the numbering scheme. I mean, look, if you ask the secretary to do this, they might take an hour to do it. I mean, you would probably put it in a spreadsheet in 10 minutes or 5 minutes or less. But to be able to say to ChatGPT, please generate the 2 columns, that would be helpful. And then you get a table, right? Now you have a table. And that table looks professional. And it's got the years. I think they're right. I guess would need to double check it, given this judge's ruling. I didn't know that Garfield only lasted for a year. Did he get assassinated or something? I mean, it looks like Garfield was in office for only a year, right? Let's look at what it says to that. Why was Garfield? Did you know that?
I did not.
Office for 1 year. See, this is the part of this that is interesting because it does make you notice stuff more quickly that you probably wouldn't necessarily get out of a book. 20 was in office for only 1 year due to his assassination. I thought I remember that in the back of my mind. Took office on March 4, 1881, but his presidency was tragically cut short. He was shot on July 2. So March, April, May, June, July, like 4 months. A disgruntled office seeker. He was shot at the railway station. The gunshot did not immediately prove fatal. The wound became infected due to unsanitary medical practices. So it's really like volunteering a lot of information, which I find really interesting. Now, whether it's accurate or not could be question. If I say, please fact check the foregoing assertions and provide some references. Let's see what it does with that, because it doesn't like providing references because it's probably worried about copyright infringement. But let's see what it does with that. Was indeed assassinated. So it's like doubling down. Medical care was indeed unsatisfactory. Like they're making it sound like some human is double checking. And it gives citations for more detailed information. Okay, this is surprising because usually you don't see this. It gives three authors, Miller, Peskin, and Millard, that supposedly tells a story. So my point in this is there's definitely some informational instigation value that comes out of this. Abraham Bell, Alexander Bell, the inventor of the telephone, was among those who attempted to locate the bullet using a metal detector he developed. I never heard that before. However, due to flaws in the design, the president lying on a bed with metal springs, the metal detector was ineffective. So it gives you a lot of stuff if it's true, or maybe if it isn't true. It's kind of interesting. If it's fiction, it's certainly interesting fiction. But I would not have even have thought of asking that question if we didn't generate the table and look at those years and say, wow, Garfield was only there for like less than a year.
Can we in Google type in one of those alleged citations and see if it?
Oh, let's see if it's real. Okay, that's good.
Google thinks
We'll wrap up
it's
on
real.
I'll type in Peskin because it's one line, right? So I'm going to go to Google. Let's see if I have Google on this machine. I'm pretty sure I do. Yeah, I do. Hang on a second. So we'll end. I'll go to Google. And I'll say, this is the book. Yeah, it is. It's here. It's on Amazon, in fact. Right? 1998 is the citation, but it looks like it might not be 1998. Well, what's it? 1998, Garfield by Garfield by Alan Peskin, hardcover, 1998, $211 on Amazon, but you can get the Kindle version, right? The beauty of the Kindle version is usually you can ask for it to send the chapter for free. Does it give you that choice? Yeah, send a free sample. So let's see what it says, sends as a free sample. I would say read now. This is how fast information can flow, right? So the citation was real. There's the book. It's up. I just got the free thing. And it has a preface. It's a real book. And I got it for free. I got chapter 1 for free, right? Chaos of Childhood. I mean, who knew about Garfield until this point? We meant to talk about taxes, but hey, didn't the tax code come into effect in 1913, the federal tax code? So Garfield was a number of decades before the tax code was passed, right?
Yes.
Right. So it's an interesting connection because if we go back, I don't know if we can do it, but if we go back to that ChatGPT session, what happened to it? Looks like it's gone now. Brother. Yeah, I just wanted to see, that's not here. I wanted to see when did the tax code come in? Like who was the actual
there was a constitutional amendment, I believe it was the 16th amendment to the Constitution that enabled income tax.
Right, but who was the president that sort of pushed it through? That's what I'm wondering about. Like I'm wondering. So the citation is real, and you could say the natural extension would be that ChatGPT would have the ability to automatically jump out and look without me having to switch screens, right? ChatGPT would do that automatically because that seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't know what you think, but it seems like a no-brainer to me to jump to that next level, right?
Jack, I've been negative about ChatGPT, but I have information from some of my colleagues who are saying things like artificial intelligence will quickly transform our world. And there will be two groups of people, those people who are using artificial intelligence and those who are not. And I see here some examples, but none of these examples actually involve services to clients, tax clients, or the filing of tax returns. These applications are more for creating marketing documents or accelerating the preparation of correspondence to potential hires, to potential candidates. So it's possible that this tool can be useful for certain things that don't need to be perfect at this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of jobs like that, though, in America, where it's really just a bunch of marketing mumbo jumbo, right? I mean,
Indeed.
isn't it? I mean, that's really the point that the CEO of IBM was making, which is that there tends to be a lot of stuff that's done by lower to middle, maybe even senior management, that is just pushing mumbo jumbo through the system and not necessarily changing the game, right?
Yes.
So what do you call it when the tax code changes?
The tax code only changes through congressional action. But the tax rules that fill in the gray areas between the code sections are changing constantly by administrative decree from the IRS or the Treasury Department. And they issue things like revenue rulings. The tax court issues tax court memos and decisions and transcripts. So there's a constant process of evolution, and depending upon whether the change is coming from the courts or from the administrative or from Congress, it would have a different name.
Because clearly we know that the code itself came in via the 16th Amendment in 1913. I don't know how many pages the code was at that point. I got to believe it wasn't that lengthy, right? Is my guess. And it was
much more.
Right? It was called the Revenue Act of 1913. I've asked ChatGPT to basically list the various years that different major tax code changes occurred, just to see if it could do it. And I'm going to show you on my screen what it's coming back with, just to see if this table, because it also provided an answer that surprised me, which is, while it's chugging this out, I'll show you the answer it gave, because I asked it, when did the federal tax law go into effect in the United States? Because I wanted to understand who was the president, and you answered before it did. But it says there was a Revenue Act of 1861. That's obviously during the Lincoln years, right? If we go back to the table, it correctly has that Lincoln was our president in 1861.
So that was to pay for the Civil War.
Right. So you'd say that really doesn't count, right?
I don't know the legality of his war powers that enabled him to do that without the constitutional amendment.
Right. So here's what it gives when I say, please provide the revisions since 1913. And it says, well, there was a major revenue act in 1913. Then there was one in 1918, 1921, 1924, 1926. I don't think these are the real titles, but then they do say in 1954, there was the Internal Revenue Code in 1954. Then there was a Tax Reform Act some 15 years later in 1969. Then some 7 years later in 1976, then some 5 years after that called the Economic Recovery Act, Tax Act of 1981, then the Tax Reform Act of 1986, then the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1990. I don't know if this is accurate or not. You know better than I do because I don't practice in the tax area. And I haven't studied anything since really law school. So probably what I was studying was the Tax Reform Act of 1976 or the Tax Reform Act of 1969, Taxpayer Relief Act 1997, Economic Growth and Tax Relief Reconciliation Act of 2001. It's just slowly punching these things out. Jobs and Growth Tax Relief. Something looks like it's stuck at this point. Reconciliation Act of 2000.
Jack, I think you broke it.
Did I break it? Do we break it? Or is it hitting the limit? American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2012. Boy, it's really slow. Tax Cuts Jobs Act of 2017.
Did we ever limit the scope to income tax?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I did. But I thought there was another act since 2017. Didn't Trump? Oh, this was Trump. Trump did the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, right?
yes,
That's what he did. Okay. So if I say take the above table and add a third column with the name of the president who signed the bill into law. It may really be slow at this point. We'll see, but basically it quickly says Woodrow Wilson for 1913, starts going down a list. I don't know if it's accurate. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones. Ronald Reagan, 2. George Bush, 1. Clinton, 2. George Bush II, George W. Bush, 2. Barack Obama, 1. And then Donald Trump. I mean, it was fast about that. It was able to leverage the previous answer and the table of presidents. So basically, we've had whatever number, 1, 2, this is saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Looks like 25 or so different major pieces of tax legislation across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different presidents in the span of the last, 104 years, right? From 1913 forward. I mean, just getting your arms around that data, that in the last 100 years, we've had 25 different major pieces of tax legislation signed into law by 15 different presidents. There's some value to that, the speed at which that brainstorming occurs to some degree, I think. But you can say, well, if you have a war, you're probably going to see a lot of different tax bills. If you have maybe 2 wars, like World War I and World War II, you're going to see a number of tax bills occur that have to deal with paying for all that military, right? And maybe that's, a suggestion about what plays out. But from that point of view, I think there is some brainstorming value because we wouldn't even have these topics in our podcast if we didn't do this little exercise. And this is all non-scripted. So obviously I'm just doing this on the fly with you, but we're having some fun as we do it. And we're also being constructively critical of what can this be used for and what is potentially risky to use it for as we look through the data here. And then how do you fact check it other than go to Google? And then you have to hope that Google is right. I mean, it's almost like you need some new type of website that takes all this data and actually can can bulletproof fact check it for you if you're going to rely on it, right? I asked, please fact check the foregoing assertions and provide some references, and it did. And we checked the reference, and I guess we'll check one more. This looks like the same. Miller and Millard looks the same. 2011, The Murder of the President, the same name. Oh, one is Broadway Books and one is something else. So let's do that final search and see what comes back, right? Because we did a search the last time around. It looks like there's two different names, Millard. Yeah, it looks like it's Millard, right?
Candace.
Is it?
For both of them.
They get Candace. The name up? Candace Millard?
Yes.
Destiny of the Republic. It looks right? It's got both an audiobook and a Kindle. And okay. So the name was Millard. It's not Miller. So Miller was a mistake, right? Miller was a mistake. Same book.
It's really the same reference.
Same reference, but they got the name wrong. Like they got the person's name incorrect here. So what happened here? You lose that tab, I guess. Anyway, there was one other one that we could have checked too, but I can't get to it now because I closed the tab. But in theory, it's providing some data that is helpful, right, for the discussion. It does instigate more of a discussion. And you have to give it that much, right? Don't you? Or
absolutely.
You don't give it that much.
No, I do. There clearly are places where this tool is useful.
Yeah, and I think in terms of brainstorming, I think there is something to be said about brainstorming with it. I think that that's a use that is not going to go away because people do get stuck and they do want to brainstorm and they do want to imagine. Let's say my session expired. That's what happened. It does throw you off after a while, which is unfortunate. I wanted to check one last thing. I know I keep saying that, but the Miller reference was a weird one, right? Because it was the same book. We thought it was 3 books, but it was really just 2 books. And the reference was to Millard, but they also said there's something called Miller, C.R. Miller, but that's probably incorrect. It looks like that's probably a mistake. It's probably something else. So if I search for Miller, Destiny of the Republic, it comes up with Millard's book. So somewhere in this, I don't know, Miller might have been misspelled somewhere, I suppose, but it's Millard. It's not Miller. So it gave 3 citations when there really were only 2. So we're kind of proving that it's not flawless and you have to really look and double check. And that's the point the judge is making. And now I should end just by saying every one of these federal judges is now very sensitive to what's going on. And they're all passing local rules that say a lawyer has to certify that the brief that they filed did not use ChatGPT, or if you say it did use ChatGPT, which I imagine most lawyers would be too embarrassed to say, you have to say, but I double checked its work. But can you imagine who's going to say, yeah, I used ChatGPT? Because they're going to say, immediately your work is suspect because it sounds like you plagiarized, right? Once you say you use ChatGPT, it sounds like you're not able to write a sentence or write a paragraph or write a brief. But lawyers are always looking for efficiency tools, and it does create these tables pretty quickly, albeit not in a spreadsheet, but I think you could move that data to a spreadsheet, right?
So auditors and CPAs are in the habit of finding mistakes and then saying, well, if that mistake somehow got through, what other mistakes
were
not detected and do we need to check for?
Right.
So
You could say the one thing the judge didn't do was he could have ordered them to disclose every brief you've ever filed that used ChatGPT from inception, and then said you have to tell the judges in all those cases whether it's closed or open, like literally extend it out to like, we don't trust you anymore at all. That would have been just horrendous if those lawyers had used it for more than this. So there's a lot of lessons in this, Steve. So I appreciate your input and thank you for your time. Tell people how they can best reach you, because you are the expert on tax and accounting, particularly for small businesses. And I refer stuff to you all the time. When people say, who's the guy, who's the man?
Thank you for that. So my website can be reached at www.srabin.com. That's SRAB as in Bravo, IN. You can also reach the same website at www.taxservice2u, the number 2 and the letter u.com. My email is srabin@srabin.com, and my cell phone is 408-887-6433.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your time. Talk to you later. Take care.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.